You're tuning into the Giving Black podcast, proudly sponsored by agentsC Inc., the fundraising, philanthropy, and social change agency. Philanthropy is the heartbeat of the world.
Let me say hello.
Hello.
And welcome. Thank you for being part of the Giving Black podcast. I'm glad Ruthie connected us. And when I saw your profile, I saw you were a fellow consultant doing great work in the fundraising social impact space. And I was like, yeah. We want to hear more voices. And particularly for me, I think I want to hear the voices of our sisters in the sector who are doing amazing work. And there are many reasons, which I think you and I will get into in relation to the unique circumstance, I would say, that our Black sisters in the USA and I would say across the African diaspora find themselves in the political context. And then there's the important work of the work that we're engaged in community and how to keep that going. How do we do that work well? So how do we do the work well and also stay well? That's a bit of a topic for us. And I think also, I know you want to speak about other things in relation to just the phenomenal work you're doing in community. and I think that'd be wonderful for our audience to hear as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Mide, for even having a Giving Black podcast. Just the platform of what your podcast represents, I think just demonstrates that not only are we givers, but we give at scale and we give with heart and we give community first. And the way that you just represent that is so beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you. One tries. I always say one tries, right?
That's right. We do our best.
We do our best. Oh my goodness, it could be lowly work out here, right? If you have a heart for our community and you see just the amazing enterprise that also is in community, but also observe some of the forces that are there to, if you like, dim our lights. It could be a bit of a lonely place, kind of just constantly being on that field of trying to resist, on the one hand, oppression, but also on the other hand, just celebrating the brilliance of who we are as Black people. So whenever folks fall into, or I join into other folks' orbits, I'm like excited. Oh, you do that too? So I'm excited.
You find your tribe, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's such a beautiful way of putting it. We find our tribe. And so here we are, tribe members.
That's right.
In the non-profit, social good, entrepreneurship space. And I'm just going to invite you, really, in your own words, to share, Kaci, with our audience, who you are. And let's start off with a question around also what brings you joy.
Who I am and what brings me joy. I think both of those questions have a duality to them that are sort of one and the same. I am a family member. So I am a daughter, a sister, a niece, an aunt. I'm a wife and a mother. And what brings me joy is my family. What brings me joy is making memories with my family. What brings me joy is celebrating the goodness in life, because while we are surrounded by so much pain, we are also surrounded by so much good and so much to celebrate every day. And so that's really what brings me joy. I'm also a bit of a competitor, and so I love sports. I love live concerts. I love to just be lost in the moment, because so much of our work, as you know, Mide, is about thinking ahead. And so the times that I get to just be lost in the moment are some of the most joyful moments that I get to have.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that expression of just being lost in the moment, right? There's a moment of being carefree.
That's right.
Having the permission to be carefree. I suppose because there's so much that we do need to care about.
That's right. There's so much we have to hold, and to be able to to release the grip for a moment is really joyful to me.
Yeah, yeah. So I get a sense, like me, you find that release through family. Um,
Mhm.
Nothing more joyful than looking at your partner, at your children, at your family extended, and even your friend circle, and just thinking, yeah, I belong. This this is me. This is what I have helped to build and bring into this world, and
Mhm.
that too, frankly, I often consider is work, right? It doesn't just happen
That's right. That's right.
without our
There's a lot
effort,
of
without
intentionality.
a lot of emotion, a lot of
Mhm.
tears, a lot of joy.
Mhm.
So thank you for sharing, and talk to us a little bit then, Kaci, just as we get to know you, about your work, the work that you do in community. Why do you do this work, and how does it manifest in community?
Thank you so much for this question, because what we do is often how we lead. And I think where we often forget to start is who we are and why we chose to do what we do. And in my case, I really believe that the work of philanthropy chose me. When I was growing up in San Diego, I'm the daughter of a father who was in the military, and I'm the youngest of four children. And when I was growing up, we were culturally Black, economically working poor, and politically conservative. And I didn't really fully understand. You couldn't have said to me the word philanthropy and that would have had any sort of resonance with me whatsoever. But I experienced philanthropy every day of my life. I remember church members bringing us bags full of groceries when my parents fell on hard times. I remember being able to host and house family members who were down on their luck. And so philanthropy was all around me, and yet I didn't know it. And in the early parts of my career, when I was working in the sort of nonprofit education service industry, I was working for a long time in the civic engagement and civic education space. I was working for a nonprofit intermediary organization. So we received,
Mhm.
a large federal grant or large private grants, and then we would re-grant those dollars out. It never occurred to me when I was doing that work for the better part of 11 years, it never occurred to me that I was in philanthropy. And yet
Yeah.
there I was, getting money out the door into community, really trying to understand what were the needs. What I've really fundamentally understood in that intermediary role was that our mission as the nonprofit intermediary was only achieved when the organizations on the ground that were receiving the money, when their mission was achieved.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
our work
Hmm.
was really about helping them to achieve their mission, and that we should be in service to that so that we could achieve our mission, and therefore the funder could achieve their mission. And so this idea of philanthropy always sort of eluded me until it finally caught me. and
Mm.
and I was sort of captured in saying, I am in philanthropy. And in fact, I've been in philanthropy a long time, and I've been doing this a long time, and I've been exposed to this in really, I think, different kind of ways, where philanthropy wasn't just an act of benevolence, it was an act of service. And so
Wow.
I started
Wow. Mm.
Social Good Solutions in 2014 as an act of service. I was a Black woman who was working at one of the highest levels in our organization. I was in the C-suite of the organization. And like many, not only Black women, but just Black professionals, I found myself overworked, underpaid, and underestimated. And I wanted to create space for my brilliance, but I also
Mm.
wanted to create space for my humanity, which included my family. And so I started Social Good Solutions so that I could have that space to be in service, but also be fully human. And how the work has evolved over time is now we are a majority Black woman-run organization. I have a staff of 14. And what started as just a sole independent consultancy has now grown into a firm. And really, the way that we express the work is we focus on what we call community co-design. Because what we know is that we can't just quote unquote give money to community and expect them to just adopt what we think is right. We have to be in service to what community knows, what they experience, and the solutions that they believe are the most important and the most strategic. And so when we're designing with community, we're getting better results. And so that's really the work that Social Good Solutions pioneers. It's really helping to operationalize racial justice and racial equity in philanthropy, because oftentimes it lives in an intellectual space, but it doesn't show up in standard operating procedures. And that's really the work that we bring to the field, is how to convert racial equity from a theory to a standard operating practice, to an applied practice.
Wow. Gosh. I first of all, the evolution, or your journey, let me put it that way in simple terms, of kind of just being in spaces where you're kind of thinking, something doesn't feel right. Can I share with you that every time I speak with a sister or a brother about their kind of entry point into the sector, and what made them pivot to, for example, becoming, setting up their own business or becoming a business person, it was always just this sense of belonging and sensing that things were not entirely going the way they wanted things to go. And for many of us, I think we started to ask questions around, well, is it me? You know, is it like, you know, is it me, or is there a system in place that kind of just makes me feel like, you know, this whole profession that I've chosen isn't for me? And I'm kind of course, I resonate and have empathy for the fact that you went through that journey too. I just want to kind of share that certainly in my experience in conversations, and I'm sure in yours as well, there's commonality in the story that we share. I share exactly the same path as you. I'm curious also, though, one aspect of your work, and thank you for sharing just the tremendous success that you've had with Social Good Solutions, and you know, I'm excited to hear about, you know, how you expanded as a business person. But I wanted to really just give a shout out to you as well because of your work with the Black Equity Collective. So tell us a little bit about the Black Equity Collective. And I don't know if there is a synergy between Social Good Solutions and Black Equity Collective, or whether you keep them apart. But yeah, just want to hand the mic over to you to hear more about what you're doing in that space.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, the Black Equity Collective was really born out of my consultancy. And so back in 2016, I was hired by a family foundation to help them think about their philanthropy, because what they were really concerned about at the time was the killing of unarmed Black men. And what they understood was that their philanthropy could have a role, but they didn't know how. They didn't know what was sort of the culturally appropriate way, because they're not Black. They didn't understand how to really enter in a way that wouldn't feel exploitive or extractive. But they had the wisdom to say, well, we need to bring in someone who can help us think through this and who has the community knowledge and the credibility to really reach the work and do the work in a meaningful way. And so they brought me in as a consultant to help them sort of figure out how should they show up in this work. And that led to the creation of a 4-year initiative called the Black Equity Initiative that they asked me to design, create, and run for them. And that initiative was 15 Black-led and serving organizations across 2 counties And we funded, or they funded, I should say, organizations that were working on the front lines of social change where Black populations were disproportionately impacted by systemic harm. That was really the root of what they were trying to address. And at the time, it was just 3 issue areas. So the organizations were working in either education, in workforce development, or in criminal justice reform. Those were the 3 areas that the 15 organizations focused in. What happened over time is as we were not only funding the organizations, but convening them 3 or 4 times a year to build relationships and connections with one another, themes started to emerge. And those themes around isolation, around needing leadership development, not only for themselves, but for the bench, themes around the funding that they get being too project specific and not robust enough so that they can build their institutions. These sort of themes started to connect between organizations, regardless of which county they were in, regardless of their budget size, regardless of how long they had been around. And so when we were about 4 years into the initiative, both the funder and the organizational leaders started to feel the same sense of urgency to say, we need to create space for more funders to come in. From the perspective of the leaders, what they felt was that it is amazing that this particular funder understands the importance of funding Black specific and Black focused work, but it is insufficient. We cannot rely on just this one funder. We need them to convince their peers to get in the game too. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, this funder was saying, how do we get other funders to come into this work, to help continue to build out this work? And really that became the first seed that got planted for the Black Equity Collective. So when we asked the organizations, well, what do you need? What would a 10-year vision around Black equity look like? Not this initiative, but just sort of cast the net wide open. What would it look like if we were to invest in Black equity over 10 years? Right. And these leaders...
Can I ask a question at that
please,
point?
yeah.
Please, sorry to interrupt you. So is the collective a fund, say like a donor-advised fund, or does it operate more... as a foundation, or is it a kind of hybrid of a number of different models of practice?
We operate more as an intermediary.
An intermediary, right?
As an intermediary.
For people and organizations who identify with the cause of fatality amongst Black youth in Black communities, if that is a cause, for example, that they're interested in, then can they be part of the collective as well? Or do you set up several other funds?
No, there's one general fund.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Brilliant.
Because what the leaders identified was it didn't matter what issue area they were working in. Mm-hmm. What they didn't have was dollars to help build their institution. They didn't have the sort of core support to help invest in the long-term sustainability of their work. Mm-hmm. So it really wasn't about the issue. It was about organizational sustainability. And that really became the focus of the Black Equity Collective, because that's what the leaders demanded. Yeah. They wanted an organization that would be committed and focused on their long-term sustainability and would help organize the philanthropic field to understand the importance of that and to drive dollars toward that. So that is really the mission of the Black Equity Collective. So we are now 5 years, into the work of the BEC, which again began because of this one initiative and then launched into a broader work. So the Black Equity Collective in its current form now has 65 organizations across 3 counties and represents 16 different issue areas, because again, the mission is about the long-term sustainability of their work. So
Yeah.
we do that by helping to organize, educate philanthropy, organize money, and then facilitate the flow of resources to them and help those organizational leaders to develop long-term sustainability strategies for their institutions.
This episode of the Giving Black podcast is supported by Flaky Crust, a London-based bakery producing the most delicious handmade pastries, breads, and treats made with care. At Flaky Crust, we believe that good food brings people together, just like good conversations do. That is why we are proud to support Black philanthropy, Afrocentric fundraising, community, and climate impact. Together, Flaky Crust and Giving Black are feeling the good around the world. If you are in London, UK, find Flaky Crust products at flakycrustbakery.co.uk. Now let's get back to the conversation.
This is phenomenal. I'm so glad we're having this conversation, by the way. And I want to share that I consistently look to the work of our brothers and sisters like you in the USA. And I'm just so much in awe of how you can organize and mobilize philanthropy. I don't say that, with a naive understanding that it's easy to do. I know how difficult.
You know firsthand that it's not. That's right.
It is not easy.
That's right.
But I think the models and the practices that you have go a long way in teaching us. Let me define us. Us are, I would say, Africa's diaspora here in Canada, either multi-generationally or new immigrant like myself. But also in the UK, where we've been in the UK for centuries, and even more recently, immigrants to the country, such as my parents. It has been very hard to have a conversation, focused conversation, intentional conversation around the role of Black community and public-facing philanthropy. So how do we organize and mobilize around the issues to the point that you say are important in our counties, in our cities, in our neighborhoods? How do we group together and say, okay, here's what I'm bringing. These are my dollars, and I'm aligned with, say, 100 other people who also have dollars, or even 10 other people who also have dollars. How do we actually organize and mobilize that? And that is a really difficult question, not only for us to answer, but also I would say it's a situation that perpetually eludes us in terms of the answer. So we can have all the intent and we can envision, but we don't always have great calls to action. On the one hand, I would say. And then secondly, I think there may be a reluctance, even when there are great calls to action, to rally, to organize and mobilize, to help our nonprofit organizations in our community who are doing great work, who cannot survive without Black philanthropy really being at the heart of their funding model, or even a part of their funding model. So I want to ask you a question. This may be a tricky question. If there were three things or three areas of advice or three actions that you would advise folks in our situation to consider, just around how we collectivize philanthropy and direct it to areas of need, even one area of need, I'll be satisfied with. But, from your practice, what have you learned perhaps are the top or the most important actions, postures, ways of thinking, being, and doing that are really important to getting Black community organized and mobilized behind the causes that impact our communities?
Yeah, this is such a good question. And it's a really important discussion because there are nuances and there are layers. I think if there was one single answer, we would have all organized around it and solved it a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the reality is that we are operating at an individual level, at an interpersonal level, at a community level, and at a systemic level. And to understand how we relate to each other at each of those levels requires dialogue and discipline and focus of the conversation. So, what I have learned in my practice and in the observation that I have made with the organizational leaders that I've worked with, number one is that the critique that we are crabs in a barrel is a false one.
It is. Absolutely.
It is an absolutely false critique.
Yeah.
Because what happens and what has happened is that we have been forced into competition with each other. And because we've been forced into competition with each other, that creates a mentality of feeling like it's either you or me.
That's right.
But the reality is that when we are intentional about collaborating with each other, when we're intentional about debunking and saying, we're not actually going to let you put us in competition with each other because we understand that our strength in numbers, that our strength in unity, that our strength in shared language and in shared ideology matters, that I need this organizational leader to survive as much as they need me to survive. That is one thing that has really changed the game for us here in Los Angeles. It is having leaders who are willing and really who refuse to be put in competition with each other.
Wow.
That has been a really significant game changer. The other thing that I would say has been really important is this idea of language, because we don't always understand and we're not always sensitive to how common sense racism plays out in our everyday lives. And so and what I mean by like common sense racism are these notions that like, well, we can't trust them with money. You know, like we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we're not investing in a risk. Like the money isn't going to be, we have to de-risk the investment in our communities. And we sort of accept language like this, you know, without challenging it, without saying, hold up, let's talk about what real risk is and who bears the risk, you know? And so the ability to actually push back on language that sort of presents as common sense racism is one of the things that we've done here in Los Angeles in particular that has helped to reshape a lot of our philanthropic partners. And yet that work remains and is ongoing, because you can't have a conversation once or twice or 3 or 5 or 50 times when you're dealing with a history of centuries of racism and oppression that is sort of built on integrating common sense racism into every part of our lives.
Wow. So from, if I've understood you correctly, and I love just the way you have provided some insight here, the competition that we find ourselves in, advertently and inadvertently, is something that we have to be able to dismantle. That sounds like our work. I feel that that's a responsibility that we in Black community must take, to kind of fully understand that there are forces out there that almost compel or invite us to compete.
That's right.
But to your point, we are choosing not to. We're seeing strength in numbers. We're really grasping at that Ubuntu, I am because we are, right?
That's right. That's right.
Way of thinking. And I love your point around language. And I think part of the challenge that we have is that we speak a lot of different languages. We speak actually, from the actual mother tongue language. So in Canada, French and English. And so, we're not always going to be on the same page when we speak different languages and may not even understand the other person's language. but language also broken down, I think, in that classic way of how we understand innately that we are in this together.
That's
and we
right.
can represent each other's voices at the tables where those voices are required, right? Again, it's going back to that competition, but it's really about, can we speak and vouch for one another? And can we challenge? The third piece, I think, is the language that others create for us around
That's right.
our competencies, our capacity, our trustworthiness, our deservedness of philanthropy.
All of it.
I can share with you that we have research here in Canada produced by our colleagues that are showing that 0.7% of all foundation philanthropy actually lands in Black-led organizations, and yet Black people make up about 4 or 5% of the population. So we know other organizations have done that research and shared it with us. And so, part of it is the foundations that are actually public service in many respects, private as they are, but they have benefited from public tax breaks, are not effective at channeling fair share of their philanthropic dollars, which is the mandate that they have. So we have that battle, that language as well. I want to pivot, if I may, just 2 more points that I'd love to take your time to discuss, because I'm curious that way. And one is, it continues, I think, on an important theme for us as people in Black community really looking to do work, good work, and achieve transformation in our community. And it is the way things have gone in the USA since the new presidency has been in place. From distance, one of the things that I observed very quickly about the mandate of the current government in the US was that wherever it seemed Black people had a vantage, not advantage, a vantage. So in other words, presence, not even like favors or whatever, just presence, and were participating, doors to that vantage point were closed. And we know that 600,000 Black women were pushed out of the workforce in 2025. Kaci, for want of a better phrase, what on earth is happening in the US, and how are you dealing with it?
Yeah, this is one of the things where, unfortunately, Mide, it's not surprising, because we have an administration that governs by retribution, governs by bullying. And when you look at the fact that we have a president who still won't acknowledge that he legitimately lost the election in 2020, and then come around to the election in 2024, and 92% of Black women voted against him.
Yeah.
92%. So it's not surprising that an administration that has proudly governed by retribution would then turn around and look at who they can make pay for that. And so the social sector, which largely employs Black women, was sort of the first to come under attack. And so we have then the ripple effects in the private sector, where things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are completely fine when we talk about our economy, but somehow completely off limits when we talk about our social contract, that now we have private sector jobs that are following suit with the public sector dismantling of what has really been a revenge campaign by the President of the United States against Black women in particular.
Wow.
What we see is that the economic impacts are not just contained with Black women. Because in our nonprofit sector, for example, in California alone, 2/3 of our nonprofit organizations are led by Black women. So you are talking about individuals who are in leadership positions in their communities, who are hiring, who are creating economic opportunity for other people. And this sort of personality trait, if you will, is something that exists within Black women across industry and across sector. We are not only serving and holding an economy for ourselves, for our personal well-being, we are often holding an economy for our family and for our broader community. So to undercut the economic stability of Black women is to really attack the Black community as a whole. And if we have to have that kind of analysis to see that what's happening is a revenge campaign. And what's happening is that revenge is being carried out economically, it's being carried out politically, and more it's being carried out culturally. Because one of the things that we launched really before this president was elected, but certainly in direct response to what we were seeing, is we launched a campaign really around Black permanency, because there was such a concerted effort happening to erase us. And at the firm, we really felt like we needed an equally well-funded, well-coordinated, well-communicated antidote to our erasure. And for us, that became Black permanency. And so that's the counter narrative and that's the counter position, because if we don't have a resistance, then we're going to continue to be erased and eliminated. The reality is, Mide, that President Obama just erected and just opened up his presidential center. The unfortunate reality is that, but for that center, we may not ever know that America had a Black president. The way in which our history is being attacked and systematically erased from federal records. And we have to see that our presence in community, our sustainability as organizations and as institutions is as critical to our sustainability as a people as any policy we've ever passed.
Wow. Gosh, I'm just reflecting on I would say the power of what you have shared as well. I think just the profound nature of it is incredible. Black presence is woven into the very foundations of what we know to be the United States of America, and to hear directly from you as an African-American woman that this attempt to erase both the history and even current day contributions and I would even say livelihoods are an active strategy of this government is sobering. That's all I can really say to respond at this time. If this is of any comfort at all, please know that we see this from all sides of the border, and we ourselves are thinking, okay, what is our role?
Well, this is why I want to sort of circle this back to the earlier point we were making around collaboration and the competition. This is why we have seen that our survival is tied to our ability to be connected.
Yeah.
Because the competition that seeks to silo us and seeks to keep us apart from each other is a strategy that ultimately will eliminate us, because they will pick us off one by one. But if we are able to say, we see this, we know what you're up to, and we're not going to let it happen, this is why the collaboration becomes ever more important, because it's a way to protect our collective existence, not just as not just as a set of organizations, but really as a people.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. Yes, I would say, and listen, for the record, if this was not clear already, any opportunity whatsoever to join you in your work, and also the door is open here on our side to be part of the work that we are doing, because I fundamentally believe in the strength that we have in numbers, and I think throughout Black history, we've seen that when Black people collaborate and come together, truly amazing things can happen. We can shift the world.
Absolutely. It's part of our quantum intelligence.
The quantum intelligence, I love it. The QI, yes.
The QI, it's part of our quantum intelligence as a people. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's as we kind of wind our conversation down, I want to ask you some questions that are now more esoteric in nature. And thank you for sharing. I've learned so much from our chat, but I want to kind of I want to invite you to indulge me in some of my curiosities now. So here we go. I know you're a family person, and that immediately makes me think of food. What is your favorite meal to cook and prepare?
Breakfast, for sure. Absolutely. Breakfast. Yes, yes.
And what's on the breakfast plate?
So it depends. So my husband is a pescatarian, but my kids are bona fide carnivores. And so my husband loves fried catfish and eggs. Ooh. And the kids want the traditional, sort of bacon, eggs, biscuits, potatoes. They love my breakfast potatoes. So this sort of quote unquote all-American breakfast for them. My daughter actually really does like breakfast burritos a lot. But I love the sort of the ability to build, like when you're doing a burrito. So sometimes I'll make, just a bunch of different things and let them go build their own burrito, so breakfast is what unites us a lot of times.
I love it. You know what? I'm just focusing on the fried catfish right now. I'm like, that sounds delicious.
We throw some grits in there. It's heaven.
Oh, my goodness. The conversation's almost over. Yeah, love it. Fried catfish. Oh, gosh. Yeah, don't get me started. Okay, moving on from food then. What is a favorite book of yours that you would recommend to our listeners to pick up and read?
Without a shadow of a doubt, it's Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown. I come back to that book over and over and over again because she really talks about this concept of biomimicry, which is this notion that in our movement spaces, we actually have to see nature as a teacher of how we build resilience and collaboration, how we innovate. And so to the degree that our movements are paying attention to the permanence of nature, then we ourselves can build permanence within our movements.
Wow, beautiful. I've never heard of the book, but I am going to definitely pick it up on your recommendation. So thank you. That's Emergent Strategy by
Emergent Strategy by
Adrienne Maree Brown. Thank you. And your favorite musical artist?
Prince. That's not even that. You don't even have to get that out. You don't even have to finish that question. Without a doubt, it is Prince.
Okay, so I found a way of discriminating when it comes to my friends who love Prince, and it is that they are big brain thinkers. They love artistry, and they are really huge on innovation. They always want to break out of the box. Is that? Would you say that is your personality as well?
Absolutely, it speaks 100% to me.
Okay. So the reason I throw in the word discrimination there is because I'm a huge Michael Jackson fan. So on this side, I think we just gotta like do whatever. But also there's this thing around perfectionism that I think kind of contains. Yeah, that's right. It just kind of contains us. We are not far out there like the Prince lovers. We stay in our box kind of, but what we produce in our box is often really exciting. So I have found that to be really interesting by way of conversations. If I meet people who are Prince fans or Michael fans as they're kind of like top artists, I kind of know a little bit about
that perspective. Those. It's like the personality of whichever one you prefer is that's a little bit of your own personality. I love that.
Exactly. Okay, final question for me then. We have kind of started to get into this, but I'm curious to expand on it a little bit. You had spoken about, I think, just finding that space to be. Mm-hmm. How do you find that space, and what do you do when you are in that space? Or shall I even ask, what happens when you're in that kind of calm space? How do you find it, number one? And how do you feel about it? What are those feelings that evoke for you when you are able to relax and be yourself and just settle?
Yeah. What a beautiful question. How do you find the space? For me, I find space through gratitude. I find space through faith.
Yes.
And I find space through grace.
Mm-hmm.
Through allowing myself grace, extending it to myself and extending it to others. And when I'm in space, what I do is I observe, which is why I love to be in nature so much. I feel like we learn so much when we just observe the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I really settle and allow my cells to come at rest from all of the stress that gets engineered around us by the systems of oppression, is when we sit in the space of observation that comes from gratitude and that comes from grace. It's amazing what opens up in our soul and what our spirit becomes open to in terms of creativity and how we sort of think about the strategic disruption that we need in order to keep innovating and surviving, because no matter what, nature remains. And the way in which the innovation, the disruption, the collaboration that happens in nature, we can embody that too, to make sure that we remain. And that's where I go when I find the space.
Wow. May you continue to find that space, Kaci, as you do your phenomenal work with Social Good Solutions and the Black Equity Collective, with your family as a wife, as a mother, with your community as you seek to transform what is happening there. I do wish you every success, and I thank you so much for grounding me in those three elements that are most important to you when you find that restful space around gratitude, grace, and faith. That's something that I will definitely carry with me as well, to be in those three postures at every opportunity I find. And I hope that that's the same for you as well, our listeners. Thank you for joining us. I often say oh, you are most welcome. And I feel this is going to be the first, or at least I would love it to be the first of a number of conversations that we have. I say on the podcast that I never like to have the final word, so I'm going to hand the mic over to you. And if there are any words, any further words of inspiration, any quotes that come to mind that you would love to share, or even details about how our listeners can locate and find you and connect with you, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for creating this platform for us to just build community with one another and find each other in community, even virtually. It's really a special space. And so just thank you for the work that you do to curate it. What I would say in terms of one, just how to reach me and how to reach Social Good Solutions, you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a presence on LinkedIn. You can reach us at socialgoodsolutions.com. That's where our website is. We are also on all socials as well, LinkedIn as well as Instagram. And my sort of final word of wisdom is something that we really embody in the work that we do at SGS. And that is to remember that the very definition of philanthropy is the love of humanity. And if our work is anything, it has to be an expression of love. And that is what grounds us. That's what motivates us. That's what inspires us. The co-design work we do, the organizing of philanthropy, the development of new models and the implementation of those models, the resourcing of Black-led work, all of it at its core is about the love that we have for our people. And so that's what I would just remind your listeners is that really center your why on love, and you will find motivation over and over and over again to keep going, even in the toughest of times.
And on that note, listeners, thank you for joining us at the Giving Black podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode.